What's going on, YouTube? Hope everybody's having a fantastic day here. I'm just making sure that this is live, and it looks like we are. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put the link to our private Zoom channel so you can join in the live audience if anybody wants to join in the conversation here and ask any questions. So bear with me 1 second. There we go. All right. Let me just pin this here. Happy Wednesday. It's another episode of Agency Success Live, and I'm thrilled that you are watching this, whether you're watching this live on YouTube or you're watching this on replay. I'm going to be peeking over just every so often just to make sure that if you are wanting to join the Zoom call, you can jump in here. So we've got a really great topic today. I think this is a topic that it's one of those not very sexy topics. Like when I talk about it, people go, "Oh, okay, well, it's that." But I also think it's one of the most critical things that if you're going to have agency success, if you're going to be growing your agency, taking your agency to new levels, it's one of those things you've got to stay on top of. And like it or not, you have to have a really clear understanding of the metrics in your agency, the reporting, and the things that you're trying to track, and really having a reason why and the strategy behind why you're tracking these things. So on this call, what I'm going to be doing, if we don't get anybody that joins us live in Zoom here, is I'm just going to go through this agenda, and I'm going to talk about what I think are the 7 most critical metrics that every agency owner should be tracking in their agency. And really, when we get down to it, you have to understand that metrics are measurable. Metrics are, the reason why they're so important is I have metrics that I can put a quantifiable approach to them. I know when I'm hitting certain things. I have mile markers. I have goals. What's going on, Michael? I have things that I'm able to track with a quantifiable, meaning I have, it's mathematical. It's 1 + 1 = 2. I have clear vision and clarity on those things. Metrics are measurable. And without metrics, then I can't have any goals. It's hard for me to derive goals or figure out what my goals are going to be if I don't know what the metrics are. And if I don't have the metrics in place, then there's no way I'm going to be able to create the strategy to meet that goal. And without the strategy, there's no way to create tactics. So when you're thinking about your agency and agency success, and a lot of times this happens around the November, December month, people always look at the year that was and they look forward, and then they always set these goals. You want to be able to have goals in place, because goals are going to be what informs the strategy that you're trying to put into motion. And with the strategy in motion, you know what tactics you need in order to get there. What's going on, Ryan? Good to see you. So I want you to think about your agency in those 3 buckets, right? There's goals, then there's strategy, then there's tactics. The tactics inform the strategy leads to the goal. So if your goal is to say, "Oh, I need to grow my new business by XYZ," whether it's premium or revenue, and we'll talk a little bit about that, whether it's any of those things, then you need to first know where you're at now so that you know how to get to where you're trying to go. The metric is the North Star. And I can make a case for any one of these 7 metrics that they are equally as important as the other one. I think all 7 of these are the ones that you can say, like, that's the most important one, or that's the most important one. That's going to be somewhat subjective on you, your agency, and the overall goal that you have. But I think knowing this information is going to be really, really, really important. A lot of agents that I talk to and that I see, whether they're small agencies or whether they're large agencies, it's not unique. They're not calculating a lot of these metrics, or if they are, they don't have any real clarity around them. And what I've seen is a lot of it is guesswork. It's not defined. It's not really quantifiable in any way, shape, or form. And so when you don't have that, it's not telling the entire story. So your metrics should be the North Star that you're driving towards when you want to move the needle in your agency. And metrics, I think, really should be thought of as levers. So if you look at kind of like the traditional sales pipeline or sales velocity pipeline, you have mathematical components to that. You have win rate, you have qualified opportunities, you have revenue, you have sales cycle, you have all that. And by pulling any one of those levers, you can affect the entire pipeline. It's a mathematical equation. And that's how I think about a lot of these metrics, is that you can tweak 1 or 2 of them You don't have to attack them all at once, although you should know what they are. But just by putting conscious effort or attention on one of these things, you can see dramatic results in one way, shape, or form in your agency. It doesn't. So as I look at it for us, I think about, we want to grow revenue. Well, I can either improve my close ratio, or I can improve the number of qualified opportunities that come in through the door. Ideally, you want to do both. But just by doing one or the other has a dramatic impact on the overall result. And this is no different in any business, but we're going to be breaking it down by insurance agencies here. So I'm going to quickly give you the 7 metrics, and then we'll spend a little bit of time in each one, and then we'll open this up. If Michael or Ryan, you guys have anything to add to the conversation or any questions that you want to chime in with, we'll go that route. But I'll quickly give you the 7 metrics that I think are really important. And there's some variables in there. So there's 7 headlines with a few little side buckets. First one is a very obvious one. You got to know the book of business report. You have to know how many customers you have. You have to know what the policies in force are. You have to know what the premium is, and you have to know what the revenue is. You have to know what those things are for the book of business. You should be able to say what the book of business report is, either via out of your AMS or your CRM, or just by knowing however you track it. You need to know what the book of business says and how it's performing. I think one of the most important aspects of that is your customer count. You have to know how many customers are coming in the door, and we'll get to it in just a moment, but you're also going to need to know how many customers are leaving. But book of business report by customer count, policies in force, premium or revenue. And I like this metric because, again, it's very quantifiable. It's I know what the net gain or loss is on either one of those, and I can quickly, from a headline perspective, see if I'm winning or losing in any particular area. The second thing that you need to track is customer retention. In other industries, this is also known as logo churn. And I think this is something I've never once heard that statement uttered by any insurance agent. I'm sure it's been said, but I've never heard agents talk about it like this. Logo churn in any other industry is the idea that logos are customers, right? So if you just think of logo as customer, customers churn, customers lost during the period divided by the number of customers at the start of the period. So for easy math, it's January 1, we have 100 customers. By the time January 1 rolls back again, if I have 90 customers, I have a 10% logo churn rate. It's the number of customers leaving. You want to know what that number is, and you should be able to try to figure out strategy and goals to improve that number, because again, it's one of those major levers that if you improve that one thing, you're improving the overall health of the book. The other thing that you should be tracking is revenue churn, lost revenue. How much revenue is leaving? Now, this could be people leaving because of customers leaving. It could be because carriers leaving the state and you're having a book roll. It could be taking a commission cut. There's revenue loss opportunities. What is the revenue churn of the agency? And I think you should segment the first two, the customer retention and the revenue retention. I think you should segment those by carrier and by line of business. I think that as you drill down into this, how many customers am I losing with company A or company B? How much revenue am I losing with company C or company D? You should segment this out by line of business to see if it's profitable to attack one line of business over the other. You should know how your auto book is doing or your work comp book. You should be able to know by line of business these types of metrics. I think the next one is I do hear a lot of agents talk about this, but I don't think I hear enough about it. And there's reasons why it's important. And I would say it's your revenue per employee metric. How many employees do you have and how much revenue do you have? I think this is really important. And I'll tell you why. First, if you want to improve your revenue per employee, I think there's 3 main triggers that you can use in order to affect this number. One, you could sell more policies per customer. If you're already meeting with them, if you're already selling them, sell them more. They need to have more than just 2 policies or 3 policies. Improve the policy count per customer. I also think you should utilize technology that's going to help you stretch out that number as much as possible. According to best practices reports, everything that I've seen online, and this is from people who do this for a living, they say that there's a variable between personal lines and commercial lines. Your revenue per employee on average, according to every best practice report that I see, is about $166,000 in revenue per personal lines employee. And that number is $225,000 per commercial lines employee. So when you think about scaling, when you think about the health of the agency, it's really easy when you look at problems to just throw bodies at it, but you have to look at it from a profitability standpoint. What's going to allow me to grow the agency in the most healthy way possible? And as you look at your revenue per employee, you want to figure out, how do I grow that number? And every year, as your book is a healthy book and it retains more, and you're not losing revenue, you're not losing customers, that number in theory should start to go up a little bit. And as you invest different things into the agency or into each employee, or you hire different things, that number is going to have some ebb and flow. But you don't want that number going down. You don't necessarily want it staying stagnant, in my opinion. That number should be scaling up as you're writing more business and retaining more of the business that you write. And as you look at, if you're in the game of maybe selling the agency, or you're thinking about trying to be in a place of perpetuation, this is going to be something that is going to be looked at as a crucial variable. What's the revenue per employee number? Because that will say a lot. If you're profitable, that number shouldn't be going down, and that number shouldn't be low. You should be looking at how to improve that number. But there's also something to be said for having a number that's too high. And people, when they think about, well, I've got a $300,000 revenue per employee number, that can sound really, really good on the front side, but that also tells you that there's a lot of margins that could be played with. There's a lot of opportunity, and depending on what your goals are in the agency is going to determine how you're going to attack that. You might say, if I got $300 or $400 per employee, that gives you, or even I've seen agencies with thousands of dollars in per employee. You want to be able to say, okay, I want to grow the agency. We have enough margin to be able to do that. Or it breaks down to an efficiency breakdown of if your agency is efficient on the sales and marketing side or the overall operations side. I know I'm saying a lot here. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to come up for water in just a moment. But if you think about it this way, that $850,000 in annual revenue, if you're a personal lines agency, by best practices report says you should have 5 employees. So when you're looking at, should I hire or not, this is an important metric to look at. On the commercial side, about $1,125,000 for the same type of stuff. And obviously that makes a lot of sense, because commercial lines policies are going to usually be more profitable. They're going to yield higher commissions than a lot of personal lines policies. So revenue per employee is a really important metric that I think it could be argued that as a business owner, it's probably one of your most important metrics. The other one that I think is super important is your operating profit. And quite simply put, an easy way to think about this with some variance is think about your net profit. How healthy is the agency? How profitable is the agency after all payroll is paid for, after all expenses are paid for? What's the operating profit in the agency? This is a metric that you want to try to think about as you work with whoever handles your finances or your books. How can we get a little more lean? How can we spend money in the right places? And how can we improve the overall profit of the agency? There's going to be hard costs, rent, payroll, taxes, those things, right? But how do we make the most out of that? How do we improve that number when and where we can? Now, the last 2 metrics that I'm going to talk about are really sales and marketing metrics. But if you're a sales or a growth-minded agency, these are things that you should think about. And I think there's a lot of mindset tweaking that needs to go on here. The first one is what's called your CAC, your customer acquisition cost. How much money do I need to spend in order to acquire a customer? There's a lot of ways you can measure your CAC, but I think you should measure it the right way. And that is, you should take into account all headcount, everybody in the agency, including yourself, and all expenses, whether they're marketing or not. How much money did I have to spend to acquire a new customer? That number is going to be different depending on where you're at. In Florida, that number is one number. And here in Arizona, that number is a completely different number. But you want to look at it in that regard. What's the cost to acquire a customer? Because that's going to lead into the last metric, and then we'll open this up for questions. And that is your lifetime value. What is the lifetime value of a customer on average? How long do they stay with the agency, and how much revenue are they bringing in? There's lots of different models for different industries. If you can achieve a 3-to-1 CAC to LTV ratio, that could be pretty good in a lot of cases. If it's 2-to-1, 5-to-1, 10-to-1, regardless of where you're at, take the CAC and the LTV and put the ratio together. It takes me $100 to acquire a customer, but the lifetime value is $1,000. I mean, on average, I'm going to collect $1,000 in revenue from each customer. If you take out the whole average, well, that's a 10-to-1 CAC ratio. That's how that math works. You want to be looking at ways to improve the long-term lifetime value. And the way that you do that is by selling more policies, by enhancing the customer experience, all the things that you need to do in order to take care of customers and make sure that they stick. You want to improve that. But here's why I think it's a mindset shift. You'll talk to a lot of agents and they'll think about investing in different marketing channels or technology platforms or different bells or whistles. And they'll ask the first question, well, what's the ROI on that? And what's, how does that all work? And they'll think very linear, one-to-one with in terms of ROI. And I think where a lot of agents fail to sort of put their attention on is they think about it in the lifetime value aspect of it. If on average, people are paying you $5,000 in revenue, $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 in revenue, whatever it is for your agency, you should allow that to be the guiding light into what you're going to do from a marketing perspective, a sales perspective, a staffing perspective, all of the above. This is going to help you run, I think, a much more healthier business, right? It's not just thinking about first year commission or any of that. It's really thinking about the lifetime value and knowing that you're not just in this for the 1 year of commission, but we're in a reoccurring revenue model business. And so putting that into perspective it opens you up to do a lot more with the different functions of your agency. You should think nothing of it if the lifetime value to get a commercial carrier in your agency, if the lifetime value is $15,000 or $20,000, and you've got to pay $1,000 to get that customer via various marketing channels or staff or payroll or whatever per customer, that's a win. That's a huge thing. That shouldn't scare you in any way. It's a mindset shift that I think you got to get around. And I think the numbers will really help justify a lot of that. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. I'm going to open this up. I don't know if anybody has anything that they further want to add to the discussion or any questions that they want to bring up. I'm going to look over to Zoom here, and then we'll click it over to we'll kick it over to YouTube if nobody else has questions here. But I know we got some folks here on the call. Anybody have anything they want to add, change, take away, or ask questions about, whether it's about this or anything else?
I think there's so many things. You just ran down like a tremendous amount of information. I think you're dead on with RPE, right? Revenue per employee. When you're looking at evaluating agencies, revenue per employee is probably the most deterministic from an innovation and how well are we adopting technology standpoint. That's what I use. If I come into an agency and an agency had a $120,000 RPE, and at the end of our time working together, they had a $200,000 RPE, revenue per employee, that's something I can stand on to say we made a difference in the way that we adopted technology. And generally that's what the leaders of those agencies will look at and say, did that work? That just went off, right?
It did. It'll probably get back on.
I feel like I know you better since we've been together now for a couple of meetings. So I feel so close to you.
I'm like, what was that?
But yeah, RPE is a great one. I think that,
let me ask you a question on RPE. Do you ever find instances where you go, it's too high? Like you guys aren't doing enough.
Well, okay, so I have agencies that I know very well that are running, 25 million in revenue at 50 employees, right? And what those employees, when you talk to those employees, what they know is, holy crap, it's a fire hose. I come in, I sit down, I turn the fire hose on, I do as much as I can, and I turn the fire hose off and I walk out, right? And that's what you get when your RPE is so high. You have overworked, you're running super lean is typically how you would say that, right? It's lean. We run a very lean shop. But it's overworked. It's a lot of hustle. I actually don't mind RPE dipping if it's strategic and we're saying we're going to change process. We're going to bring in things just like net profit. A lot of times agencies will come up on net profit and say, we want to be Elon Musk. And I'm like, well, what are you good with your net profit being? We want 33%. Well, you're never going to be Elon Musk because you can't run an innovative shop at 33% net profit. You're willing to dip down to 16% for 3 or 4 years while you invest in process technology.
There has to be a story to tell.
Exactly correct. Yeah. And so, it's in each one of these in isolation, I think it can be drilled down. I think one of the main metrics that I use that you didn't mention was average account size. So if an agency tells me their average account size, I can tell you almost everything I need to know about that agency. I've worked with agencies that have $800 average account size, and I've worked with agencies that have $55 million of revenue on 358 clients. So, you're talking about $250,000 average account size, which is which is huge. If they lose an account, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's about strategizing on what you want to go after, right? It's at some point you have a bunch of business and then you're like, hey, now we need to be purposeful in what we do and what we try to target. And I think that's how that average account size gets. But I think, there's so many of the things, like I think about Lemonade when you talk about CAC, right? I mean, my CAC is very small. So, I wish I had a larger CAC.
That's what she said.
But, you look at Lemonade, I mean, they spend a ton of money on client acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. And they know that because it's supposed to be a lifetime or a long-term spend.
Yeah.
But one of my besties, he spends $40,000 a month on digital marketing, and he tracks that down to the dollar to see what happens with his clients. But there's a return over the next couple of years that justifies that spend, So, yeah. I mean, I think you're dead on with most of the analytics. I think that, it's important for these agencies to understand what these are, to be conversational about them, to be able to bring them up. I mean, you think about book of business, shit, you can't operate without book of business.
Yeah. But you'd be surprised. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised, but other people would be surprised at the amount of agents that don't have any realistic clue of that.
Well, and most agencies, when you ask what's your book of business, they will run a rolling 12 book of business. So they will run a rolling 12, look back at invoicing and say, for travelers, this is what we did over the last 12 months.
I also think it comes down to definitions, because
it does.
So we always give the number that I think looks the best. And I think one of the metrics that often gets confused the most is retention. People will ask, they'll give out a number, what's your retention rate? We talk to people all the time. They'll say, well, my retention is 92%. And we go, okay, well, is that premium retention? Is that customer retention? Is that policy retention? Is that revenue retention? What are you basing that off of? There's so many different definitions. I think it would be great we can kind of standardize what retention really means. To me, like healthy retention is accounts, number of accounts, because premium is going to fluctuate,
right?
And I think revenue is going to fluctuate. But when you're talking about, are you growing or are you receding? I think it comes down to a lot of times accounts. And I can also see where this would be different depending on the type of shop that you are. Going back to one of your earlier points, I know an agency that's about $5 million in revenue with 4 employees. Right. And the agency owner told me, he said, we got to start writing like a bunch of like small policies. We have to start writing a lot more personal lines. We have to get those HO4s on the books, because what happens is to your point, one account leaves, it's a huge, that's a haymaker. So you have to have there's got to be a balance in it.
Well, and I think retention is huge, because like, okay, so when I was in Florida, we hit 2000. I was at Lanier Upshaw. We hit 2005, man. And we came through 4 hurricanes and the market's hardened. So like we were making money like crazy, growing 20% revenue, right? We were not paying attention to anything else though. It was just revenue. We were getting bonuses like nuts. We were spending money like crazy. And then 2007 and 2008 hit. So the market softened. Contractors went out of business, right? Construction just got hammered.
Yeah.
So then we had rate decrease plus the client loss that was covered by premium increase earlier that we got hammered on. And because we weren't paying attention to both client revenue, premium retention, policy retention, and whatever, because there's so many nuances in that. Yeah. But those 3 numbers, that was a lesson learned under fire that you have to pay attention to. And it's like you said, I mean, everybody can do what they want with retention, but I really like to see account retention and revenue retention and premium retention, because that, if I can get those 3 numbers, then I can really tell you the story. So I love what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think to that earlier point, there has to be a story behind it. And I agree. Like if you're in growth mode and if you're saying we're trying to grow the agency, then that's a story that has a narrative that says, okay, our net profit's going to be a little bit lower. Our, some of these metrics are going to be a little bit different. Our cost per acquisition may be higher because we're in hyper growth mode. And I think it comes down to the type of agency that you want to run. I know that when you're trying to sell an agency, these are things that the buyer is going to, like these things matter in acquisition. And I think we all want to get to a spot where we're in a place where we can at least position ourselves for the best type of acquisition.
Yeah,
With
we all want 14x, right? I mean, that's what everybody wants. Everyone wants 14 times, right? Please
right
give me that. And so,
on top
yeah,
line revenue. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. But yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to hear from Mike. I'd love to hear from Wade. I mean, what their, what their experience is with data and how they translate this stuff into action as well. Because I think knowing numbers and then what to do with that to change those numbers.
Yeah.
Well, we don't do that often. We look at a number, we don't know the path to make those better, how to judge that and do that. So I'd
Yeah.
love to.
And before they jump on, I would also say, I think we attack things backwards. So to your point, it's like, well, okay, I know what this number is. Well, how do I do it? And I
Right.
think a lot of times we attack too many things with the tactics. Like, well, I have to go spend more on Google pay-per-click ads.
Right.
I have to go spend more. I have to go do X, or I have to go do Y. We attack these things with tactics, and we forget the missing piece. The meat of the sandwich is really the overall strategy that you're trying to do. Maybe it is a digital strategy. Maybe it's an acquisition strategy. Maybe it's a number of different things. But it's really identifying the strategy first, and then saying what tactics support that strategy.
And then testing that. Do an action, see a result, change your action, see a result, change your. I mean, that's how it has to be done. And too often, it's not. Analytics aren't used that way.
Yeah.
And I think if I can jump in here, I think if you don't know your data, you're always reacting instead of being proactive. Once you know your data and what you're looking at, then you're proactive in everything you do in your agency. But until you know the data, and I'll be honest, right now, we don't have all the data. That's why I'm on this call. But we're slowly figuring it out. And then it allows you to have that plan to grow. If you don't have that plan, if you don't have the data.
Well, you're in an interesting situation too. If I'm allowed to speak about it, just from my perspective, is, I mean, you've merged with two other agencies. There was a pretty decent merger that happened where you're combining two other agencies, one that's focused primarily on commercial and middle market, one that's on a more national personal line strategy. Like, you're merging these three things together. You're having a three-way with a bunch of, and it's hard to procreate anything of value there. So it's like that. Talk about a mess and trying to have to clean that stuff up.
Well, and that's what we realized as we went through our merger. The data was a mess. And to Ryan's point of everyone wants 14x. All right, well, you may get 14x if you have your data clean and you can show what's actually going on in your agency. But yeah, it's a complete mess, to be honest, merging all the data from three different agencies. But to your point about customer acquisition and lifetime value, we were actually talking about this today on what to pay an employee. I don't think it's a bad idea to break even first year commission. If the agency itself is not making any money on commission the first year, I don't necessarily see why that's a bad thing if you have a high lifetime value.
Yeah, I think it depends on the account.
From a producer standpoint, though, I mean, you mean from every agency I've ever worked with takes a loss on the producer, a new producer's first couple of years. I mean, and so any agency ever, at least mid-market agencies, are always taking losses on produce. I mean, success ratio for producers, 33%, 35%, right? Mm-hmm. So that means that for out of 10 producers that I bring on and salary them, 3 of those will validate. 3 of those will create commissions enough to justify their salary, right? Yep. And so, I mean, so you're always taking a chance on production, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you guys think? I mean, are you taking a loss the first and second year? I guess it depends on the.
I mean, dude, I've seen agencies take. It just depends on your commission, right? Like, so we had an agency that had a big hitter came on. We paid him $200,000 salary, thinking first year he's going to kill it, and he didn't do. 3 years later, he was totally like 600 grand in the hole to us, and we had to let him go. I mean, but he was one of like 8 that we brought on, and 3 of those actually did okay. And so we kind of, but because internal perpetuation in agencies, if that's the way you're trying to perpetuate, right? If your strategy is, I'm going to bring a producer in, grow a producer to buy me out over time, that person has to be successful. And you're looking for not only validating producers, but rock star producers that are producing. I mean, in a commercial lines agency where I was, that $200,000 in new revenue was what would qualify you as a rock star producer, but to find that guy, that's 1 out of those 3 might be that person, right? And that's your owner. And so much of it is determined on what the perpetuation strategy of the agency is. Where if I'm a 65-year-old owner and I've got 2 buddies that are 65 and we're just waiting for the multiple, they're not going to be investing in that kind of stuff. They're not investing in tech. They're not investing. They just don't care because they know whatever they do to move the needle in the next 3 or 4 years is not going to matter that much on the margin. So they're just going to stay stationary. But for large commercial shops, they absolutely take a huge loss on production because it's where their expenses. I mean, they're paying 40 points on new too. I mean, typically, right? You're paying 40, 20 on a typical split. If you're paying more commissions, it's because you have less capabilities to help them sell. The bigger shops, the USIs of the world, they're not paying 40 points because they help producers be successful, right? They have all the tools to help that producer sell business. And they can say, we'll pay you 25% new business because it's going to be so easy for you.
There's volume and there's efficiency.
That's right. Exactly. And all the support and all the tools and all the data, the benchmarks and the My Edge and all the crap that they have purchased, right? Like agencies do not ever scale production, that stuff for the most part, because they're so afraid of not being able to attract producers.
And Nick, I don't know if you want to talk about, we haven't really talked about marketing yet. What I'm finding as I handle a lot of the marketing, you need to know your data when it comes to marketing, because I could be doing 10 different things. And if I don't know which one is actually driving the revenue, I'm spinning my wheels on at least 5 of them. I know 5 of them are probably bringing in revenue. The other 5, I'm probably losing money.
Yeah.
So that's important. And I don't know, we kind of talked about this. If you want to touch on it, if you have more information, there's a lot of things in marketing, like a lot of the organic stuff that can't really be tracked.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what we do in that case, in that scenario.
Well, that's part of your customer acquisition cost is your headcount. So if you have somebody on your team who's like you yourself, or like somebody that would be an assistant to you, and their sole job is to help with content or help in marketing or operations, and you can't put a dollar-to-dollar, one-to-one attribution aspect to them, you account for it in your overall CAC. And so when you have your headcount and you judge, okay, what is it costing us to acquire this from a department standpoint? I think that's how you kind of measure that, and you see, okay, you test and iterate from there. But you're right, in the marketing side of it, and sales and marketing, I think goes hand to hand in this. Is you have to look at things. You have to know what your pipeline stages are, like from a qualified opportunity to just a marketing generated opportunity. What is your ideal client? What stages are they going into, and what's the propensity of those to close? In traditional operations and organizations for a long time, the mathematical equation is called pipeline velocity. How long does it take to look on a look back period to say how fast is stuff moving through the pipeline? And I can share the mathematical equation with you if you'd like, but essentially, it'll probably take me a second to pull it. I'll pull it up, but it's
pipeline velocity and sales velocity. The sales velocity is new business current period versus written business previous period, right?
Same thing. Pipeline velocity and sales velocity they're interchangeable terms.
Yeah, and so I mean, sales velocity is something that all the big agencies use. I mean, Reagan uses that as a standard benchmark to help you understand what that looks like. And so again, that's a great one to track.
Yeah. And you can make the argument that it's the most important sales and marketing metric to track, because it accounts for all the different, it accounts for opportunities. It accounts for acquisition. It accounts for a lot of those things to where it creates a mathematical proposition as to how the pipeline is performing. And so I actually have an Excel spreadsheet that I use to kind of track pipeline velocity. I can share. I think I've actually shared it with you in the past.
You did share it with me.
Yeah. It's to Ryan's point, it's something that most companies, even outside of insurance, look at when they're sales organizations or marketing organizations, because it helps track the efficiency of where they're at, and to really, like, when you're reporting on, or you're trying to get clarity around it, helps you understand. If you just pull one of those levers, like I mentioned earlier, win rate versus opportunities, you can do the same. You can have the same impact by not getting any new opportunities, but just by improving your close ratio. So it allows you to pull levers in that mathematical equation to kind of know where you're going.
Beautiful.
Welcome to call, Andrew. So
this has been good. Nick and Ryan are smart. It's a good episode.
Wade, I'd love to bring you on if there's anything that you have that you want to go over, or any thoughts or questions.
Oh, I just love the sharing of information. I'm a pretty small agency compared to some of these ones you guys are mentioning. And man, we're just blowing and going all the time and not looking at the numbers. So I've actually fired myself from a lot of sales and service jobs this year. So just so I can start looking at the numbers. So I can't wait to dig into a little bit further. I appreciate you guys sharing.
Absolutely. Andrew, you were pretty active in the chat there. I can read some of the stuff that you were saying, but just on the YouTube video itself. But can I chime in or thoughts, questions?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just, thanks for the invite. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's, just any kind of conversation. I'm relatively new to the industry. I don't know, feel free to shut me up if I ever start to bore you, but I just joined an agency that my mom started about 10 years ago, and she's on her 7th agency, and she's been, doing insurance for like 37 years or something here in Colorado and around the region. And I come from a background of outsourced operations and business development in the enterprise world, working with clients like Netflix and Airbnb and Instacart and Square and stuff like that. So for me coming into the insurance industry, I've always, she's been doing it for longer than I've been alive, and so I've kind of grown up in it, but I never knew intimately what the industry was like. And so coming into it last year was very eye-opening to me to see, just candidly how far behind the industry is from a business process perspective. Technology
that's an understatement.
Right. And so, and we're, by on no means are we using second-rate solutions that, we're on like QQ Catalyst, for example, on an AMS. And, and we have we've done significant investments in SEO and our website and things like that. And we use developers, but at the end of the day, the environment, what it seems to be the case is in the industry, it's not very common that people are able to establish an environment that, provides this data, right? To actually build business plans and understand where your business isn't optimized, again, from a people, process, and technology perspective. I guess if you're kind of evaluating your business development on those 3 pillars, and then you're evaluating your organization value based on product and servicing efficiency and operating rhythms. And, do you have the solutions in place for those 2 pillars? And really, as I came in and start to look at the standard solutions within the industry, there's not really many canned solutions. You kind of have to cobble together, your various business process solutions and inevitably try to create that ecosystem that's providing you data and then maybe even automation and efficiency across those. And so that's been really challenging for me. I think that's how I inevitably came across your guys' name, is really just looking at the full suite of solutions and how do we start to, create those integrations and to have that full visibility across the business, but then, yeah, I'm sure I could talk at great length about, the models for different agencies and, and in different value propositions for different markets and how one agency might try to grow from one audience to another, or let's say from, again, to your point at targeting accounts versus size of accounts, average size of account. I personally tend to believe all those things are important. One really does have to know their space and their market. Yeah. Where do they have viable products and where can they viably service that demographic? And, and then they can really craft that plan to what does that road look like to start getting into that mid-market, into that enterprise arena. What products do I need? How can I start to work towards those, and what does my servicing need to look like in order to adequately service that demographic? But I think that once you come across it from a business development standpoint, which is exciting to see more people starting to do. I think that the old school insurance way was, hey, I can get a license and I can go sell.
Yeah, you can fog a mirror and you got a license and there you go. Here's your shingle.
Right. They like to work in the business as opposed to on the business. And they believe that their efforts alone will drive their sales as opposed, and it's great to see more people really starting to focus on the development side, it seems, because this is the tip of the spear as far as I'm concerned. This is where agencies will actually turn into optimal businesses that if I'm an angel investor, I might actually want to invest in because they might actually be profitable. Whereas I think if you look back even just maybe a decade, I bet you the majority of agencies probably couldn't even tell you what their NGM is. I bet you even now a lot probably couldn't tell you, but yeah, so it's all really good conversation.
Awesome.
I mean, what you talked about was ideal client, right? And so like, and it's rare really to find an agency that has said, I have a defined ideal client. This is the value proposition that we can offer them. It's not a service differentiation. I have a relationship with carriers. I staff for the expertise. These are the things that I do. And like you said, I mean, they say riches are in the niches, and it's absolutely critically true, especially in our space, because, you know, you can run a much more efficient book if you niche that book out and have really good staff that knows that effectively and have carriers that write that well for you, than if you're a generalist agent that doesn't really define what the value prop that you bring is. And I think we start in that space where we don't have a defined value prop. I mean, and I would just say to Wade, look, being little is awesome because you get to set right now is when you get to really set the mold for what you do when you're bigger. And if you do that now, as you scale out, you will find that some of the things you felt were silly at this size pay off in freaking spades, because there's never a perfect time to do it. And so I love the fact that you're going through that right now and really taking that time. I mean, from an insurance agency data guy, I love you. And I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. Looking forward to hearing more from you in the future as we kind of dig into these numbers. My numbers are, who knows what they are at this point right now, because I haven't really been measuring them.
Yeah.
You know, come in the office, a typical agent my size, work the deals, work the phones, work all the stuff. And I just decided back in January, fired myself. I hired a VA to do all the behind the scenes stuff. And I got rid of bookkeeping. You know, I'm talking about, you know, these are the things I've been in small offices. And then you leave the office and you don't know what you did all day long except take phone calls and work deals.
Your wife asks you, how was your day? Like, I have no idea.
Right. It was a fire hose in my face all day.
I don't want to relive the day, so I'm not even going to tell you.
Yeah.
I made a strategic choice to look for different partners, and that's where I came across a better agency this year, because there are zero good processes and workflows. I've had every management system out there, and the workflows stink.
That's not an excuse. I mean, that's in my opinion, as a person that's been in this industry, if somebody comes to me and says, I've tried 5 CRMs and I failed at them all, what's the right one?
No,
I'm looking at the commonality between the individual or AMS or whatever you have. It's about the training, the investment in time and energy, and it's lessons that we learn over time. And so I get it. I mean, there's no perfect system out there, but the more that you devote to training on better agency, on any system that you have out there, the more you'll net the result of it. And it sucks because training, I want to shoot myself in the face sometimes with it, but it is so critically important to help our employees embrace things.
Yeah.
When you make the strategic decision to invest in a management system and they get bought out by the big dog a few years later,
well, I feel for you. Dude, if you're a Tech Canary, you went to Tech Canary and got bought out by Applied. Yeah. So like my boy, Chicago, runs a $40 million revenue firm, flipped 18-month training. Holmes Murphy spent like $13 million on training, and then they got screwed, right? And they're still on Sajita. So, I mean, there's a lot to feel for you, bro. My heart hurts for you for that.
Ever since I left Tech Canary, I've been struggling. So I'm hoping that better agency will do us right.
We'll be here for a while.
They will.
We'll be here for a while. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and getting into the numbers. Thanks for the talk today. It's been good stuff.
Awesome. Ryan, what's going on? Ryan, you've been on every single call, man. I appreciate you.
You're welcome, Nick. It's been helpful to me. That's for sure. It was a real pleasure to be at the conference out west a couple of weeks ago. It was absolutely the best conference I'd been to. Ryan, I saw you there.
Dude, we didn't meet. You didn't come and hug me. Like, I'm hurt.
In the hallway there, but
I'm so socially awkward. I would have loved to meet you because like everybody I talked to is like, do you know Ryan Clegg? He's doing all this stuff over there. And so I'm sorry I missed the opportunity to give you a hug.
I know. Like I said, we were going in different directions in the hallway the one day, and I was like, oh, that's Ryan Deeds. He's been on the calls, but
that's Ryan Deeds.
Yeah, exactly. But no, we're I missed the first part of this call tonight. I was working on some stuff, but we just signed up with Better Agency. We're leaving Epic over the past 18 months or so. I've spent over $100,000 with Epic, and it's been a total disaster. It's literally transformed my agency from a very forward-thinking firm, young, energetic crowd to this, like, what are we doing? I mean, so it's all about technology. We're super excited. I've been talking to Katrina, Nick's salesperson, for a long, long time about Better Agency, and I'm super excited for them and the progression that they've made over the last year. And, you know, we made a big mistake with Epic. And so we really wanted to take our time on this next decision. And we're super excited. We think we have, you know, we've got 6,800 customers that we've not done anything well with. And, you know, the CRM from Better Agency can, you know, certainly help us kind of connect with customers like we haven't been able to through the systems we've been in. We were with QQ Catalyst. I think, Wade, you just said you were with them, or maybe Andrew did. Been with them, you know, QQ Evolution started in Deerfield Beach, Florida. We're in Tampa. So we're in QQ country, if you will. And, you know, so super excited about Better Agency, super excited about kind of, you know, growing the book of business that we already have. We've got a great opportunity to cross-sell, upsell our existing client base, and excited to be a part of this agency success thing. Nick, you're really focused on something really cool. I think that your kind of approach to, you know, just agency success is neat. Nobody else is doing it, and they should be. And
they should be. We're hoping that we're hoping to change that. We hope that we can at least, we think about this as an overall category. We think about the idea that every company in the future is going to have to figure out a way to either departmentalize it or figure out a way to invest in it, because we think that we come from the perspective, and I think everybody on this call would agree to some extent, if not the whole thing, that independent agents are the best distribution channel, and they need the most empowering, because when they're on steroids, like it's the best outcome for customers and for carriers and for partners and for everybody involved. And so we want to invest in that, whether it's technology, education, community. That's how we think about it. We think that we hope to see a lot more companies start to you know, take up that approach as well.
Yeah, they need to listen. They need to listen to their clients' needs. You know, our communication with Applied, not to sit here and badmouth them, but our communication with Applied, I mean, they haven't even written us back on our 60-day termination. Like, they haven't, you know, it's just customer service at the end of the day. And you need to have an open channel with the people you're working with. And
that's right.
You guys are excellent at that. Ryan, I think you need to, I mean, there's so many of us that would be interested in that journey from, you know, one of the tried and trues to something like Better Agency that's really pushing the envelope and doing amazing things. You know, I think that you have a lot of content there. You know, your shop is not small. You've got a lot of stuff going on there. I would love to get some inside information and looking at, you know, what did that separation agreement look like? How did that happen? What's the conversion process? What was a pain in the ass? What was good, man? There's a ton of content there that I think a lot of us would love to be able to partake in. Just wanted to
I'd love to share it with you guys. I think it'd be fun for me to kind of regurgitate it. I've never really done that.
Well, here's what we're going to do. And this is not a Better Agency pitch by and large. I want people to know that if they're watching this, and I appreciate the kind words, but you're going to turn on you're going to get started. You're going to turn on some of these things, and it's not going to be long before I'm flying to Florida and we're doing a full on case study. So we'll get that whole narrative.
That'd be great. I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it.
Hey, that might be the difference for me. I'll tell you right there.
Yeah. No, we've vetted it. I've made a mistake. You know, Epic, I owned that mistake in my agency. And so we just needed to take our time and make sure that we were making the right decision. And I know we have. You know, we spent the time and effort into figuring out what we were going to do next. And
it's not an easy decision. We recognize that. It's not easy for people just to jump. So
I like to say my decision in 2009 or 2010, maybe, to hire Epic was my biggest Epic failure as an agency owner.
Yeah.
That was early on in their product launch.
Right.
It wasn't ready. It's interesting to know it's still not ready all these years later.
Yeah. But Nick, I think, you know, these videos or these kind of live, you know, kind of spitball sessions are phenomenal. These are very, very helpful. So thank you.
Having fun. I'm trying to figure it out a little bit. We're iterating a little bit. I think it'd be great. You know, over time we get double the people here from all kinds of backgrounds and sizes and scopes and focuses and interests. And really have a great discussion. So I appreciate everybody for being here. This is all I have when it comes to agency metrics and everything else. So if there's nothing else anybody has as far as questions or last bit of input, we're going to go ahead and call this a night. We've been here for 50 minutes. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I appreciate everybody tuning in. So any last call for questions, thoughts, concerns, prayer requests, all the above?
Just any spreadsheets that you talked about, you want to share, love to copy that.
Yeah, what I'll do, wait, are we connected on social?
We might be, but I got your email, reach out to you.
Yeah, I'll shoot me an email and then I'll respond. Anybody else who wants any like the templates I use for tracking different things, all the pre-calculated stuff, I'll just send that stuff out. It's just Google Sheets and Google Docs and all that stuff. As we're trying to also build a lot of this stuff just natively in, because again, this is our perspective and our point of view, building a lot of this stuff into where it's just easier to do in technology. So that's what I have.
Thanks for putting it on, man. I really do. I think these are awesome. It's great to get different perspectives. And so I'm so glad that somebody's brave enough to step out, and definitely inspires me in trying to figure out next steps.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you being the co-host tonight. Anytime. I'll take that anytime. So, all right, guys. Well, you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you guys here next week for the next episode of Agency Success Live.